This is McCue reporting for Unique Dyslexic iRadio. Hello, this is McCue here for Unique Dyslexic I. Today I want to talk a little bit about dyslexia and assessment and being dyslexia positive. The first thing I'm going to say is I am dyslexic. Not just a little part of me is dyslexic. I see and make sense, learn about the world through my dyslexic prism. I don't have dyslexia. I don't suffer with dyslexia. I don't hate being dyslexic. I am not a person with dyslexia. I am dyslexic. For my own part, once I was assessed, I began my own journey into understanding about being dyslexic, how being dyslexic and unassessed dyslexic at school impacted me on my education and enabled me to take a journey to go back to school and to discover that I was academic and I had academic potential. So I went from loading lorries to running a dyslexia department. I went from being a schoolkeeper to running a social enterprise, to founding and running my own social enterprise. I went from being a labourer to doing this podcasting thing. So that assessment freed me from, not that there's anything wrong with being a schoolkeeper or a caretaker or a forklift truck driver, but it freed me, enabled me to reach my potential. The most important thing I got from that assessment. So a dyslexia is crucial for us because without one, how can we as dyslexics understand who we are? Begin to understand what being dyslexic is fab. Stop ourselves from becoming negative self-fulfilling prophecy based around a medical model of dyslexia, which talks about dyslexia in terms of deficits, disorder and discrepancy, which causes us to limit what we can do. So before I was assessed, I would have said, yep, being dyslexic has disabled me. After I was assessed and got to know and understand how my dyslexic mind worked and got to realise how that being dyslexic and undiagnosed dyslexic at school, that it wasn't me as a dyslexic that was an issue, it was the fact that our schools were dyslexia unfriendly. And at that time anyway, not really anything was known about dyslexia, or if it was, I'm sure nothing was going on in schools about it and the education system about it. I just want to say being dyslexic has so many positives. We have strong emotional intelligence, fab creative ability, with big picture thinkers, 3D thinkers. Our empathy is fantastic, and there are so much more positives in and around being dyslexic. Come back to me, give me some more positives, please. Comment. It would be really good to hear from you. Okay, reading can be a pain. I skip paragraphs, I skip sentences. It takes me a while to get the information off the page into my head. But there are ways that we can get round that. Changing the colour of the page, changing the font, using a text-to-speech engine can help us with the reading side of things. It can be a pain, but it doesn't stop me from reading. There are solutions out there. My spelling can be a trifle bizarre, but it does not stop me from spelling or writing. I have my good friend Alexa here. Alexa, can you spell dyslexia, please?
Dyslexia is spelled D-Y-S-L-E-X-I-A.
Now, I don't know if you heard Alexa giving me the right spelling for dyslexia. I find Alexa is fantastic. It helps me with a lot of things, including my short-term memory, my organisation. It's fantastic. I really like it. As for my memory, God blimey, my memory, it can be a trifle... what was I going to say? It can be a trifle forgetful. Don't ask me about remembering names. What's your name again? I know I used to hang about with people and I used to wait and not say anything and wait for somebody to say the name of the person I wanted to say something to so that I could say their name. And if there's any one thing that's most annoying about being dyslexic, it's not being able to remember names. I've been out, I used to go out on dates. I don't date anymore because I'm a married man, but I could go a whole night on a date and not know the name of the person I was on a date with. It's horrible, but that's the way it was. Now, I'm a great believer in the social model of dyslexia. It's our model. It's one that we've developed for ourselves. It defines dyslexia in a positive way. It talks about dyslexia in terms of diversity and difference. It's not a model that has been imposed on us by a non-dyslexic, dyslexia unfriendly society. The medical model will say dyslexia is all about deficits, disorder and discrepancy. Which one would you choose? Diversity and difference, deficits, disorder and discrepancy. Now, I'm going to go back to my assessment. That was the first step of enabling me to understand what being dyslexic meant for me and how I could start to develop my strategies and enable me to move away from what I was doing before and what I'm doing now. But it also helped me with my mental health, with my self-esteem, with my self-confidence, because I knew what caused the mental health issues. It was the frustration of being in a dyslexia unfriendly classroom where I couldn't access the learning. So many of us leave school with mental health issues, with low self-esteem, with poor self-confidence. And indeed, I can still feel that when I'm feeling tired. I can still, sometimes the mental health thing, the self-confidence thing, can still come back to haunt me at times. But I'm going to go back to this idea that I see and make sense of the world through a dyslexic prism. It's not a small part of me. There's not a small bit in my head that says, here's the dyslexic bit of you, Steve. It's not. It's all of me. It impacts on my thinking, how my problem solving, my emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is so important. Empathy is so important. It might be one of the reasons why we do end up with mental health issues, because we are really the emotion thing is quite strong within us. And I'm going to go back to school and say, where in school do we talk about emotional intelligence? Where in school do we talk about empathy? Where in school do we talk about mental health issues? Well, maybe mental health issues is a bit strong, but we don't get the education, the learning, the access to the things that we need to know about at school. So I'm going to say about dyslexia, society has a very narrow view about dyslexia, and it's one narrow view that focuses on the negatives. You can't spell, you're forgetful, you can't organise yourself, your writing's crap. My handwriting is terrible. My handwriting hasn't improved since I'm about 8. I write in capitals all the time. And if I'm going to go back to assistive technology, my piece of assistive technology, the one thing that helped me through university was just access to a keyboard. No, in my first year at Roehampton University, I really struggled passing exams. And one of the teachers basically looked at my work and says, how can you expect to pass an exam when you're handwriting like this? And which I was doing. I was writing in block capitals really slowly, and I was never going to I was never going to pass. I actually did manage to pass a couple of exams, but I couldn't pass one. I moved to a different university, and practically straight away, I got a dyslexia assessment. I got disabled students allowance, gave me access to a computer, gave me access to a computer keyboard, and I was able to move forward. So what is another thing a dyslexia assessment gives you is you can start problem solving your issues and look for solutions. Does that make sense? Yes, of course it does. Now I go on about a dyslexic prism. Okay. What our education system does is it tries to make us in an image of non-dyslexic kids. It tries to teach us in ways that non-dyslexic kids learn best and we don't learn at all. And so if we look at comparing non-dyslexic kids to dyslexic kids, it's a little bit like comparing a cow to a kangaroo. Now, trust me, this is going to make sense eventually. You ask a kangaroo to jump, and it will jump because it's built to jump. That's how it works. It's got the springy legs and it likes to jump. Then if you ask a cow to do that same jump, it quite simply can't because it's not built. Its makeup doesn't built to make it able to jump. So what happens in school is that we find that we're told that we're the cow that can't jump. So what happens in education is we are labelled as a cow that's disabled because we can't jump like a kangaroo, a non-dyslexic kid. We are diagnosed, we are sent for jumping lessons. So what they try to do is make you in the image of a non-dyslexic kid, which is daft. And I think my on reflection, maybe my explanation is a bit daft, but it's the closest thing I can to explaining it. So which model do you prefer? Do you prefer the medical disability model, which talks about dyslexia in terms of deficit, disorder and discrepancy? Or do you prefer a social model of dyslexia that says it's all about diversity and difference? Now, I'm not trying to say that we don't need support in school. Of course we do. Dyslexics do. Just like people with disabilities do. Just like people with autism and other neurodiverse communities need support in school. But it's not because we are neurodiverse or dyslexic. It's because our education system doesn't work for us. So I think one of the reasons why I do social model of dyslexia, and I've linked it with social enterprise, is because I think that offers the dyslexic community a much more positive way forward. One that doesn't necessarily say that being dyslexic is not good. I know I bang on about the medical deficit model of dyslexia and how negative it is. All that the medical model tells us is that we are ill in some way and that we need to be cured, that we need to remediate it. In school, there is far too much focus on remediation, taking us out of the classroom, segregating us into some respect, and again trying to make us into a non-dyslexic image that we will never achieve, and I'd never want to achieve, because I think being dyslexic is fab. Now, the vast majority of successful dyslexics say they're successful because they are dyslexic and in spite of their experience in education. I'm a great believer in that we need to get together as a community. We need to challenge the negative medical discrepancy model of dyslexia, and we need to replace it with our model, one that we put together. And unless we do break away from that medical model of dyslexia, we will keep on condemning our kids to becoming negative, self-fulfilling prophecies. We will keep on condemning our kids to coming home from school in tears because they've had a really bad day at school, because our education system is dyslexia unfriendly. friendly. We will have parents who are dealing with the fallout from school in terms of mental health, in terms of self-confidence, in terms of self-esteem of their dyslexic kids. They could spend more of their time, instead of trying to deal with those issues, they could spend more time working with their children and enabling them to start discovering about their dyslexia and the positives about being dyslexic. I think that's the last you're going to hear from me. I think I've rambled on enough, which is probably a good thing. So I'm going to say peace, love and grooviness to you all. Please, if you have anything to say, why don't you email me on Steve, STEVE _McCue, MCCUE, at hotmail.com. Why don't you message me on my Facebook, Unique Dyslexic Eye Facebook page? Or you can send me a message on Messenger. Join me on my Facebook page. That'd be really good. So I'm going to say, be seeing you. Take care, look after yourselves, and thanks for listening. Please share, please comment, please leave a like. It'd be really helpful for me in my quest to try and find some funding to keep my Unique Dyslexic Eye channel up and running. Thanks very much. Bye. This is Stephen McCue reporting for Unique Dyslexic iRadio.